Amazing twist. 10 years after he left his baby at my doorstep, the truth was exposed in court. Sarah stood frozen in her small, unkempt kitchen, bills piled high on the table before her, anxiety gnawing at her gut. The court summons lay crumpled in her hand like a weight threatening to crush her very spirit. 10 years had passed since she found Jason's swaddled brother, abandoned at her doorstep with nothing but a plea to take care of him. Countless nights had been spent juggling 2 jobs, her existence a constant battle to provide Jason a life she'd never known. Now the echo of her own tumultuous childhood hung over her shoulder, reminding her of the specter of abandonment she thought she'd avoided. The looming presence of Henry, Jason's biological father, sent shivers down her spine. Wealthy, influential, and all too familiar with the power he held, he felt almost mythical. She could almost hear him laughing, see the smug confidence in his eyes that told her she was merely a fleeting obstacle in the life he could offer their son. What right did she have to challenge him? Flashbacks of her struggles to make ends meet, the hours spent cleaning tables while wearing a tight smile sliced through her thoughts. Could all that she'd built be taken away in a heartbeat? Fear twisted within her, a coiling serpent, squeezing tighter as the date of the trial approached. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into sleepless nights leading up to the trial, the courtroom looming like a dark cloud over her. With every passing moment, doubt clawed at her, feeding on her fears of inadequacy. She envisioned towering oak podiums, Henry dominating with his slicked-back hair and tailored suit, all while she remained an unmade bed of worry and frayed ends. Questions pierced through her mind. Was she enough? Could her love, forged through sleepless nights and tender moments, withstand the acid litmus test of the legal system? She found herself physically recoiling at the thought of standing in front of the judge, feeling absurd, insignificant. The trial brought unexpectedly shocking revelations, plunging Sarah into chaos. Secrets whispered amongst her fellow patrons at work unfurled like a sordid novel. Whispers became rattlesnakes, biting her deeply with the little truths that she'd never wanted to face. Every piece of evidence introduced seemed to ignite an emotional kamikaze within her, testing her resolve in ways beyond comprehension. What if Henry's past held answers to Jason's abandonment? Could her heart bear the pain if this was all an elaborate story that robbed her of the very fabric of her life with Jason? Just as she steadied herself for the unthinkable moment to speak, a shadow moved at the edge of her vision, a figure from her past re-emerged, transforming her world once again, leaving her to grapple with a new awareness. This roller coaster she thought she could handle was careening off the tracks. Was the abandonment a calculated act or a desperate decision made in a moment of hopelessness? The questions hung heavy in the air, choking her resolve as she prepared to navigate the murky waters of truth, the line separating love and loyalty blurring into uncertainty. What awaited her in that distant reality, where the life she'd created could unravel in the blink of an eye? The day of the trial dawned with an oppressive weight. The air seemed charged with a tense anticipation that made Sarah's skin crawl. She stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair with unsteady hands. The reflection stared back at her not as the determined mother she aspired to be, but as a frazzled woman caught in a storm beyond her control. Every wrinkle carved by worry deepened with each fleeting second, nudging her into despair. Arriving at the courthouse, she felt small in the cavernous halls, towering marble pillars and caged lighting looming over her. Each heel mark against the polished floor echoed her internal chaos. The courtroom doors, stark and imposing, felt like the gateway to an abyss. A wave of nausea washed over her. She hesitated just outside, heart racing with primal fear. Would the truth set her free or shackle her forever in a web of her own making? As she stepped inside, she saw Henry already seated, emanating an air of calm conviction. The attorney beside him whispered confidentially, and the glint of their laughter felt like a direct assault on her resolve. The scales of justice threatened to tip, not in her favor. She trembled but forced her feet to move, each step feeling like a monumental act of defiance against the specter of doubt shadowing her every thought. The trial commenced and Sarah listened in rapt horror as testimonies unfurled, revealing layers of deceit masked behind smirks and glances shared between Henry and his lawyer. Her heart raced at the recollections his tales painted her as a reckless, unworthy guardian. Every mentioned detail carved deeper into her soul, straining the tenuous fabric of her identity she built alongside Jason. She felt like a ghost in someone else's life, trapped in the narrative they orchestrated around her. As the judge called for a recess, Sarah's mind whirled, racing with fears and strategies. She had been too passive, too willing to accept the narrative they wanted to sell. Suddenly, the lingering memories of all those late nights spent making dinner, tucking Jason into bed, and creating a sanctuary for him ignited something often hidden beneath her insecurities. It was in that split-second moment of realization how much she truly loved Jason that her forgotten courage began to blossom. What if the truth of her devotion could counter their made-up story? A determination gripped her heart. She resolved to confront Henry, not as a defeated ex-girlfriend, but as Jason's fierce protector. When the recess concluded, dust motes drifted through beams of hesitant sunlight spilling into the courtroom. Sarah took in a breath, deeper than before, steadying herself for the moment she would step into the spotlight. As the judge called for order, the silence was deafening, amplifying the thrum of her heart. This was no longer about her, and surely not about the specter of Henry's heritage. It was about Jason, their story, and the past she had fought so hard to make into a future filled with love. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling yet resolute. Every eye in the courtroom flicked towards her, their gaze anchoring her resolve. "I need to present the truth of who I am and what I will fight for." The courtroom quieted, tension swirling as she prepared to tell her story, her past woven with Jason's future. But just as she found her footing, a new voice broke through from the back of the room, sending shockwaves of uncertainty spiraling through her. The once familiar face, now tinged with urgency and understanding, called out to her from the shadows, forcing Sarah to confront the very roots of her fear. Would she be strong enough to face what awaited her next? Sarah's gaze snapped towards the voice, her heart launching into a wild rhythm as a surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. It was Beth, her former best friend, an apparition from her past who now stood at the threshold of the courtroom. Anguish and resolve battled in her chest. Beth had distanced herself when Sarah needed her most. The years had twisted their friendship into a fragile thread. But the urgency in her expression stirred memories, old laughter, shared secrets, and dreams that had long since frayed. "Sarah, wait," Beth called out, urgency lacing her tone. "Your Honor," Sarah faltered, glancing at the judge, who looked bemused at the interruption. What was Beth doing here? With every heartbeat, Sarah could feel the weight of the trial pressing down while the courtroom seemed to narrow around her, a theatrical stage painted with tension. She had invited the truth to guide her, but this unexpected presence blurred the edges of her clarity. "Please just hear me out," Beth implored, stepping forward, the sharpness of her voice slicing through the thick atmosphere. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to retreat, to protect her fragile stability from the chaos Beth represented. But a deeper need welled within her, a need for understanding, a closure tangled in bitterness and love. "Speak, but be concise," the judge commanded, adjusting his glasses impatiently, a sign of frustration mingling with intrigue. Beth met Sarah's gaze, the gravity of years spent apart weighing heavily in their shared silence. "I know you're fighting for Jason," she began, her voice softer now, threading sincerity through the raw edges. "There's something you deserve to know about the night Henry left Jason with you." A collective intake of breath filled the room as a ripple of curiosity passed through the spectators. Sarah's heart raced. What could possibly be revealed? "Henry wasn't alone that night," Beth continued, stealing glances at Henry, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "There was a woman with him, someone I recognized. It wasn't just a chance encounter. It was premeditated, there was a plan in place." Each word struck Sarah like a punch in the gut. She fought to steady her breathing, confusion mingling with a glimmer of hope. What was this supposed plan? Did it involve Jason? Did Henry mean to tear their lives apart from the start? "Why didn't you tell me before now?" Sarah demanded, urgency sharpening her voice. "I was scared," Beth said, anguish swimming in her eyes. "I thought if I distanced myself it would protect you from the fallout, but now I see I was wrong. I should have stood by you." The immediate tension in Sarah's chest morphed into a whirlwind of purpose. She sifted through turbulent emotions, disentangling betrayal and the turbulent friendship she cherished. This was the key, something she could use against the narrative Henry spun. With her resolve rebirthed through Beth's revelations, Sarah straightened taller, the edges of her fear blurring into a sharp focus. Your Honor, I need to present evidence that supports my claims. I can't fight for Jason without the truth. Her voice had transformed, no longer uncertain but powerful, a beacon forged in adversity. Henry's face drained of color, his earlier confidence wavering. The courtroom's tension shifted palpably, crystallizing around Sarah as her words hung in the air, laden with gravity. But beneath this resurgence of strength, an unsettling doubt flickered within Sarah. Had Beth's return been a moment of salvation, or was this the start of a deeper strategy to manipulate the proceedings? As she locked eyes with Henry, determination tangled with apprehension, Sarah was battling more than a custody case. She was confronting her past, and every choice now could carve a pathway either to victory or defeat. The judge looked ready to restore order, but Sarah knew too well that her journey was just beginning. Some truths have yet to surface, she thought, readying herself for the next move in this intricate game. What lies hidden in the shadows could either be a weapon or a weaponized betrayal. With the courtroom poised on a knife's edge, she would find the answers. And soon, hidden truths or not, she would confront Henry and lay bare the deception that had haunted her. As the echoes of the moment settled, it became clear to Sarah the stakes had risen dramatically. But the looming question remained. Would the revelation she uncovered lead her to her son, or further entrap her into uncharted chaos? As the courtroom settled into an uneasy silence, Sarah's thoughts spiraled. What did Beth's revelation mean? The room felt stifling. The air weighed heavy with uncertainty. Your Honor, Sarah began again, her voice steadier this time. I request access to any records regarding that night's security footage, witness statements, anything that could substantiate Beth's claims. The request felt bold, a gamble. But the truth was her only weapon now, and she could not back down. Very well, the judge replied, his tone clipped. We'll revisit this after a brief recess. Ladies and gentlemen, please return in 30 minutes. The gavel slammed down, and the courtroom buzzed alive again, shifting from a tableau of tension to a flurry of hushed tones. Sarah turned to Beth, who had taken a seat across from her. A mixture of anger and confusion twisted in Sarah's gut. Why now? She asked, keeping her voice low but intense. You could have told me sooner. Beth's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I know. I was trying to protect you, but it was wrong. I thought distancing myself would keep you safe from Henry. I was foolish, Sarah. I don't need your protection, Sarah shot back, the words dripping with cathartic venom. I needed you then, not a ghost of our past. I'm here now, trying to help, Beth insisted. The surprise of her response caught Sarah off guard. Was there a flicker of genuine remorse in her former friend's demeanor? The courtroom chaos faded into a backdrop, her conflict with Beth taking center stage. Beneath the hurt and betrayal lingered a waning ember of sisterhood. Okay, Sarah breathed, aiming for calm rather than confrontation. You're here. What do you want from me? I want to be there for you in any way I can, Beth replied, her voice trembling slightly. We could work together to find the truth about what Henry is hiding. Few will let me. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Sarah's mind. Partnering with Beth could be a risk or a powerful alliance. Trust had given way to wariness, and yet, beneath the fractured pieces, a part of her still longed for that connection, one that had bolstered her in tougher times. I'll think about it, Sarah said quietly, feeling the weight of her choice heavy on her shoulders. The recess gave her a moment to collect thoughts, re-strategize for the battle ahead. She surveyed the courtroom, a peculiar mix of faces, her instincts sharpening with a keen awareness that every person present could be a potential ally or adversary. She needed to dig deeper, understand the layers of deceit woven by Henry. This case wasn't just about custody. It was about unearthing the truth and reclaiming the life she had fought for. With her heart racing, she sat back in her chair, mind racing through possibilities. The woman Beth mentioned, who was she? And what could she provide in terms of evidence? As the recess came to an end, Sarah stood firm, a new sense of determination growing within. She glanced at Henry, a predator with an air of confidence masking his fear. This was about to become personal, A reveal that threatened more than just the structure of a family, it would crack open the foundations of their entire lives. The judge returned, and Sarah sensed the critical moments enveloping her. As proceedings resumed, she steeled herself for battle. The courtroom might have felt like a battleground filled with memories of pain and betrayal, but in that uncertainty, she began to envision herself as something more than a victim. With every heartbeat in her ears urging her forward, the moment was ripe for confrontation. Her gaze flickered back to Beth, and uncertainty lingered. But this was the time to make a stand. Would she be able to extract the truth and wrestle control from Henry's deceptive grip? With the judge's gavel poised to strike, Sarah clenched her fists beneath the table, ready for the impending storm. The chaos around her faded, leaving only her resolve not just for Jason, but for herself. As the words began to flow once more, a question began to take root in her mind: what if uncovering Henry's secrets forced her to confront the shadows of her past that had been buried for far too long? The judge's voice sliced through the murmur, jolting Sarah back to the moment. "We will continue with the questioning of the witness," he announced, his authoritative presence demanding attention. She took a breath, aware of the eyes focused on her, each judgmental glare reminding her of the stakes involved. "Miss Thompson," the judge called out, directing his gaze toward Sarah. "How does this new information affect your case?" The weight of his question nestled into her chest. Was she ready to delve into the heart of her conflict with Henry, and unearth everything that haunted her? "The information is crucial, Your Honor," Sarah said, her tone gaining strength. "If Beth is telling the truth about what happened that night, then there are inconsistencies in Henry's account. We need to explore every avenue to confirm these discrepancies." The judge nodded, appearing impressed by her newfound assertiveness. A flicker of validation sparked within her, a surge of confidence she desperately needed. The tide was shifting, and she could feel it in her bones. "Very well," he replied. "Let us hear what Beth has to say. Miss Sullivan, please stand as a witness." As Beth approached the stand, a ripple of unease washed over Sarah. Memories of their shared past stirred years spent navigating the delicate balance of friendship and rivalry. She positioned herself firmly in that courtroom, ready to confront these memories head-on. "Tell the court what you know about the incident in question," the judge instructed, his tone brooking no argument. With a quick nod, Beth began recounting the events of that night. Each word was imbued with urgency, yet Sarah could see the fear lurking just beneath the surface. It wasn't enough to drown out the possibilities weighing on Sarah's mind. What if the truth was more devastating than any of them anticipated? As the testimony unfolded, Sarah couldn't help but feel as if she were peeling away layers of an onion, painful, revealing, and absolutely necessary. Her heart raced at the potential repercussions of what was being unearthed. A part of her longed to retreat, to shield herself from the impending storm of revelations, but another part was ignited by a fierce need for resilience. "Henry had said things to me that made it clear he was more involved than any of us had assumed," Beth stammered, glancing cautiously between the judge and Sarah. The truth sat heavy in the air, and Sarah felt her resolve strengthen. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Sarah challenged, her voice echoing across the room. This question wasn't just for show. It was fueled by the deep-seated betrayals that festered between them, resonating painfully. "Because I was scared," Beth admitted. "I thought I could change everything by staying silent. I didn't want to think about the implications." "You thought not speaking would protect us?" The anger sparked again, twisting painfully in her gut. Her voice trembled under the weight of history. "You thought that would protect me?" Beth nodded slowly. "I know I made mistakes. I wasn't thinking clearly. But after seeing you in court, I realized it was time to take a stand." The juxtaposition of pain and courage in that moment felt surreal. Two women, once friends and now adversaries, standing vulnerable yet determined in the face of a common enemy. Could they truly navigate this together? Or was the trust irreparably damaged? Sarah shifted her focus to the jury members, searching their expressions for signs of empathy or apathy. She needed them to feel the intensity of her journey, to grasp the depths of suffering that Henry's manipulation had wrought. A practiced veneer had masked her determination, but it began to crack. Could the truth forge the path toward redemption, for both herself and for Beth? As Beth continued giving her testimony, threads of clarity began to weave through Sarah's mind. This was her opportunity to reclaim authority, not just over her past but over her future. It would not merely be a battle for custody. It would be a fight for identity, purpose, and the unadulterated truth. The courtroom clock ticked relentlessly, each second echoing the urgency of the moment, defiance coursing through her veins. Sarah needed to act decisively, to capitalize on this dynamic shift in the case and her life. But as the barrage of questions lingered, another thought blossomed. What if the deeper secrets that awaited her could dismantle everything she thought she knew, altering the course of her fight indefinitely? She took a breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The moment arrived when Sarah realized that she had to confront not just Henry, but the ghosts of her past, in an all-or-nothing demand for truth. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted as the tension thickened, almost palpable. Each tick of the clock punctuated Sarah's heartbeat, a relentless reminder of the stakes at hand. She could feel the weight of Beth's testimony folding in on itself, layers of shared history and fresh betrayals binding them both in this complex narrative of guilt and survival. Taking a deep breath, Sarah focused her attention back on Beth. She recognized that every word spoken had the power to either dismantle her carefully constructed resolve or propel her toward a long-sought liberation. What else did Henry say that night? She pressed. The inquiry reverberated through the courtroom, a raw edge cutting through the air. Beth hesitated, gnawing on her lower lip as the silence grew deafening. He mentioned things about you, Sarah, about how you wouldn't be able to handle the truth. There it was, the unguarded admission that sent a shockwave through Sarah. It was a pointed reminder of her vulnerabilities, and the fabrications that had woven their lives around fear and deception. Handle the truth? Sarah echoed, incredulous. Her voice raised slightly, revealing the strains of disbelief. What could be more devastating than lying to the people you claim to care for? A flicker of anger ignited within her, one that intertwined with her fear. The truth can be too much. It can destroy everything, Beth murmured, her eyes wide with a hint of guilt. As Sarah's mind raced, she caught the fleeting glances of the jury, a mixture of pity and intrigue reflecting back at her. Was this what the courtroom had been reduced to? A twisted game where the truth twisted itself to fit narratives and expectations? In that moment of realization, Sarah felt an unyielding surge of determination. Is it true of you, Beth? Were you also afraid to face what you'd done? She challenged, unyielding. Memories of their friendship surfaced, the laughter, the shared dreams, the betrayal that now hung over them like a dark cloud. I am, Beth admitted, the sincerity edging into her voice. But I also thought by staying quiet I was protecting you. And myself. Could Sarah trust her? That question lingered like an unwelcome guest. It was a moral dilemma, one rooted in the complex layers of their past. Blind loyalty seemed like a distant memory, swept away like debris in a storm. A crucial realization dawned. Their paths had become irrevocably intertwined, each carrying the consequences of Henry's influence. What did you think staying silent would achieve? Sarah pressed further, conscious of her unique position in this courtroom drama. Did you think he would just go away? Beth's shoulders sagged, surrendering to the inevitable reckoning. I thought he would change, that he cared for you even if it was twisted. As the courtroom absorbed this exchange, Sarah began to see the cracks in her own armor. How often had she, too, opted for silence, waiting for the right moment? Could her denial be as dangerous as Beth's? A flicker of hope emerged amidst the turbulence. This battle was no longer just about custody or betrayal, but rather an exploration of their own identities. How would they reclaim their narratives from the shadows that Henry had cast? Sarah realized that confronting the truth wasn't just an act of bravery. It was an imperative if freedom was to be snatched from the jaws of manipulation. The unrelenting pressure of the courtroom settled back on her, and she felt a renewed resolve ignite inside. The next question would define not just this case but the trajectory of her life. If there is more to this story, we have to reveal it. I won't stand for half-truths anymore. As resolution flooded her, Sarah caught Henry's gaze across the room. The subtleties of fear danced there, revealing a vulnerability she had overlooked. Would this newfound clarity open a door for confrontation, or merely trap her further in conflict's grip? The walls of her past constricted, breathless with anticipation, cradling Sarah in a newfound urgency. Henry, she declared, locking eyes with him, your silence ends here. As the shock rippled through the courtroom, she understood the enormity of her declaration. Would revealing the full complexity of their entangled histories connect the scattered fragments of truth? Or could this reckoning lead to an unraveling so complete that it would render her utterly lost? The whispers in the courtroom morphed into a low hum, filling the space with a suffocating tension. Sarah's declaration hung in the air, an electric charge altering the dynamics of the room. It was a turning point, one that beckoned her to confront the shadows lurking behind every memory she held. Henry's startled expression momentarily shattered the control he had masked himself with. Sarah felt an unexpected pulse of triumph. Here, in this room of hard stares and muffled gasps, was a chance to unearth her truth and reclaim the narrative that had long been dictated by Henry's manipulation. Yet, uncertainty prickled at her resolve. What further truths lay buried beneath the layers of pain, guilt, and misplaced loyalty? They were not just memories. They were pieces of an intricate puzzle she had to gather and assemble into a coherent picture before the jury and herself. Why don't you tell them the truth, Henry? She challenged, her voice unwavering, lips curling with the weight of suppressed anger and determination. About the choices you made that night, choices that have haunted us ever since. The jury leaned forward, their eyes riveted to Henry as if trying to decipher his carefully constructed facade. She could sense their anticipation, a need for clarity that paralleled her own burgeoning desire to strip away distraction and find her authentic self amid the chaos. But Henry was a master of evasion. He'd used half-truths like weapons throughout their shared history, and now he leaned back, crossing his arms defiantly. What truth are you hoping for? Only you and I know what really happened. His arrogance radiated with the familiarity of years spent weaving a web of lies around them. Exactly, she shot back, refusing to cower under his empty bravado. And it's time for the real story to leave your lips. This is not your domain anymore. That statement unleashed a flood of memories, all the moments where she had failed to confront him, burying her feelings under a facade of compliance and desperation. The recognition was jarring, each memory flashing like an old reel of film portrayed by an unreliable narrator. As she stood her ground, Sarah felt her own emotional turmoil evolving into something far more potent. This was not just a trial about custody, it was also a courtroom for her own soul. The very act of standing up against Henry, of dismantling the walls built around her mouth and heart over the years, was invigorating. However, what continued to unfold inside her was the gnawing realization that speaking the truth in its entirety might mean revealing parts of herself she had long kept hidden, parts that bore vulnerability's likeliness to fail, to be unworthy, to be unloved. Each potential revelation was a thorny question of identity. Henry, she pressed, hoping to tilt the balance in her favor. Do you want to keep hiding behind your fears? Or will you finally acknowledge the role you played in everything that transpired? His expression shifted, shifting from confrontational to something softer, tinged with defensiveness. But the flicker of vulnerability ignited something deep within her, a core strength ready to burn brightly in the face of confrontation. The murmurs of the jury confirmed that they sensed the pivotal moment. They were watching, waiting, eager for the unraveling of the storyline. With every ounce of will, Sarah stepped closer to her own truth, her professional self unwilling to let fear dictate the narrative any longer. I want the truth to come out, not just for me but for my child as well. You need to face who you are, Henry, just as I am facing who I am. His silence became a void, an emptiness that threatened to engulf them both. In that moment, she could feel the reflecting stares of every person in the courtroom, and the symbolic chains binding her began to dissolve. And then, a flicker of realization formed in her mind, a new question, one that could shatter the silence in more explosive ways than she'd anticipated. What if, beyond her own story, there lay another hidden truth, something that could tip the scales of their shared destiny? Tell me, she challenged, her voice now an echo of her present power. What else aren't you telling us? The courtroom held its breath. And in that heartbeat, Sarah understood she was not just on trial, she was rewriting the entire script. The silence in the courtroom felt electric as Sarah's question hung in the air, pregnant with potential chaos. The weight of unspoken truths was almost tangible, exhilarating and terrifying at once. She could sense the excitement and fear in the jury's collective breath. a palpable acknowledgement that something significant was about to shift. Henry's eyes darted, searching for an escape within the constraints of the courtroom. Sarah noted the subtle twitch of his jaw, a tell she had learned over years of observing him. He was unraveling, and with every moment of silence that stretched between them, she felt the power of her words solidifying her stance. "Sarah," Henry finally responded, his voice low and edged. "You've always been one for theatrics. But this isn't a play. You can't just rewrite history because it suits your narrative." "No," she countered, steadier than she ever felt. "This isn't about theatrics. This is about reality, the reality you've worked so hard to manipulate." She could feel the timbre of her voice, aware that for the first time, the edge of fear was softened by conviction. Each phrase was formulating her identity not just as a victim, but as a protagonist reclaiming her story. Sarah watched as Henry shifted in his seat, discomfort etched all over his face. In that moment, she realized something profoundly liberating. Confronting him didn't just empower her. It illuminated her own truths, the ones she had sheltered beneath years of compliance and expectation. She could finally address the thorns of betrayal and abandonment, and capture them in the light of day. What would her journey entail if she carved out her space in the world? The thought kindled an urgency inside her. It was a pivotal juncture, the intersection of empowerment and responsibility. "Why don't we take a trip down memory lane, Henry?" she proposed, her heartbeat quickening with adrenaline. "Let us tell them about the night you decided to leave. The morning I found our child alone at my doorstep. The moment you threw our entire lives into disarray." The room crackled with a mixture of shocked gasps and whispered conversations. The narrative no longer belonged solely to him. She was crafting an alternative lens through which the jury could view their shared past. Henry said nothing, but she could see through the fissures of his carefully maintained facade, glimpses of the man he once was and the fear of the man he now embodied. "Let us talk about the reasons behind your choices," she continued, undeterred. When the revelation flowed like a waterfall, shards of her past blossomed into understanding. "Did you ever stop to consider what this has done to us? To me? To our child?" The truth struck her fiercely. She was no longer merely a bystander in her life. This was her defining moment. They were in the crucible of confrontation, and every question posed not only stripped Henry bare but also drew her confidence from the depths of her despair. As the silence thickened, Sarah felt her resolve crystallize. She had expected a battle, but finding her voice transformed her into a warrior of sorts, really a guardian of the story that needed to be told. If Henry remained silent, it only served to expose him further. But beyond that, a realization stirred. What did Henry's acknowledgement, or lack thereof, reveal about the depths of her resilience? Was it possible that every lie she had been fed had nurtured a strength inside her that she had yet to fully comprehend? "Henry, if you don't acknowledge the truth of who you are, you'll only betray yourself further." "It's time," she pressed, unyielding still. She would not allow herself to retreat into the shadows. As the jury awaited his response, she knew she had ignited a line of questioning that threatened to rewrite not only their past but the present and future. With every heartbeat, the courtroom became a vessel for transformation. And just as Henry opened his mouth to respond, something in the air shifted. There was a tension that felt poised to snap, a keystone moment waiting to be revealed. "Sarah," he finally said, voice quavering, "you really don't know everything." The lines were drawn, and the tide was turning. The path forward would unveil secrets long buried, pushing Sarah to confront not only who she had been, but who she could become. What was left unsaid might shatter the remnants of their shared history, or give birth to a new beginning. Sarah felt a sense of gravity sink in as Henry's hesitant voice echoed in her ears. The courtroom transformed into an arena where the past and present collided, each piece of evidence twisting the knife deeper. "You really don't know everything," the implication lingered, a dark cloud overshadowing the air between them, as she braced herself for the implications of his words. Her heart quickened. What could he reveal that would shake her resolve? Hadn't she just clawed a path to this moment of empowerment? Yet, beneath the rush of adrenaline, a twinge of anxiety wormed its way through her mind. Clarity often came hand in hand with fear. Sarah focused intently on Henry's face, searching for any sign of weakness, any flicker that might betray the truth. "Then enlighten me," she challenged, her voice steady and loud in the silence. Any hint of uncertainty was buried beneath layers of newfound conviction. It was a role she was growing increasingly comfortable in, the arbiter of her own narrative. He hesitated, and Sarah watched as a bead of sweat formed at his temple. His discomfort only confirmed that she was relentlessly pushing him to a corner. The thought exhilarated her. Was it your plan all along to let me bear the burden alone? She pressed, each word calculated. The memories of her struggles, the sleepless nights, the desperate moments of self-doubt flooded back uninvited. But instead of drowning in them, she wielded them like a weapon. You think this is all about you? Henry snapped, his voice rising, a hint of desperation creeping through. You never considered how I felt, that I was trapped. Trapped. The word resonated, igniting a fire in her chest. A hint of understanding flickered within her. It was true. She had been somewhat blinded by her own pain. Maybe he had felt helpless just as she had. But you chose to abandon us. What's done is done, she countered. You left me to pick up the pieces. The tension in the room thickened as the jury shifted, a reflection of uncertainty mirroring her own internal conflict. Should she give voice to her understanding, or should she solidify her stance against his excuses? Henry's posture shifted, as if considering a strategy. Do you really think I wanted to leave? To forget? His eyes bore into hers, a silent plea for understanding. I wasn't leaving you, I was leaving myself. The unexpected admission took her aback, but she quickly masked her shock. She would not allow this dialogue to redirect her progress. This isn't about your redemption, Henry. This is about the truth, and you owe it to our child, to me, to finally own up to the choices you made. As the gravity of those words settled in, she felt the warrior within her. Not just for her own sake, but for their child. Her voice softened, cutting through the remnants of hostility drowning the room. What's more important, protecting your image or acknowledging the hurt you caused? He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Silence hung heavy. It was a void that felt more vigorous than any argument. In that stillness, Sarah felt a surge of clarity. She stood not merely as a victim but as an advocate, one who would reshape not just her narrative, but that of her family's fragmented history. Henry, she whispered, breaking the silence. This is your chance. Don't let fear hold you hostage anymore. As she spoke, the realization settled deep within. Their lives had been interwoven through trauma, and it was through understanding his pain that she might find closure, and maybe even the strength to forgive, for the sake of their child. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted. Even the jury seemed to absorb the weight of her words. This confrontation was evolving into something powerful, greater than herself. With that understanding blossoming within her, she stepped closer to their shared past. But as Henry finally began to respond, Sarah could see the turmoil swirling in his eyes. What truth awaited her on the other side of his admission? Would the hidden depths of their past lead to a resolution, or would it unravel all she had fought to reclaim? The tension in the courtroom swelled as Sarah took a resolute step forward, her heart racing in unison with the collective anticipation of the jury. She could feel the weight of Henry's silence, a precarious balance teetering on the brink of revelation. It was a moment of vulnerability that she had yearned for, a chance to confront the shadows of their past and reclaim her own narrative. Henry, she pressed, her voice steady yet laced with the urgency of the moment. You have the ability to change this story. You hold the power to acknowledge what happened, decide if you want to rebuild or keep the walls up. Each word she uttered had become a building block for her resurgence. It was no longer about mere survival. It was about unearthing the threads that connected their fractured lives. He inhaled deeply, the air around him tightening as memories resurfaced like specters begging for acknowledgement. It wasn't ever my intent to abandon you or Jason, he finally admitted, his voice tinged with desperation. I was scared, trapped under the weight of expectations, but that fear doesn't justify your choices. Sarah interjected, allowing her pent-up emotion to flow. You left us both. You need to face the consequences that come with those decisions. The truth of her words echoed through the courtroom, their weight resounding in the hearts of everyone present. Here, she was no longer the frightened woman floundering in uncertainty, but a fierce force standing against his distortion of reality. The surprised eyes of the jury reassured her. They felt the gravity of the moment, the righteousness of her fight becoming palpable. What does it take for you to see? Henry pressed, grappling with the force of their unfolding narrative. There was fear, yes, but there was also flickers of regret dancing in the depths of his expression. It was as if he was finally facing the ghost that he had woven into their lives, a testimony of who he was and what he had cost them. Sarah leaned in, driven by a larger purpose, one that transcended their personal conflict. It takes acknowledging the truth, Henry. It takes humility, realizing that your choices impacted more than just you. It destroyed the foundation we could have built together. The courtroom remained silent as the implications of her words sank in. With every breath she took, she could feel the clarity of her purpose crystallizing deeper within her. She was not just fighting for custody. She was fighting for the legacy of her son, for a chance at a healthier life, unmarred by the shadows of the past. Every day I spent working 2 jobs, juggling my life for Jason's future. I did it with love, she continued, each word dripping with conviction. I fought for his happiness. As his mother, choosing the right path meant I must also confront wrongs with strength and honesty. It's time you do the same. With those final words, the tension in the room shifted again. Henry opened his mouth to protest, but Sarah saw the flicker of acknowledgement pass across his face, a realization of the burden he had placed upon them both. I know I hurt you, he managed, his voice unsteady. The judge, watching intently, interjected. Are you prepared to confess what drove you to leave your child and partner behind? Henry hesitated, the truth pressing against his heart. I thought leaving would benefit everyone. Benefit? Sarah scoffed, disgust apparent. You didn't think about the consequences. You froze when you could have fought for us. Her resolve radiated through the courtroom, imbued with a strength that demanded to be seen. Your Honor, Henry finally spoke, his voice cracking. I regret my actions. I didn't understand the depth of love that pushing away would only break us. It was a coward's move. The air shifted again as clarity settled across the courtroom. The momentary admission fostered silence. Sarah felt a profound sense of transformation swirl around her. This was her moment, not just to reclaim her identity, but to redefine the path ahead for her son. Jason deserves better, she asserted, her confidence solidifying. He deserves to know the truth and to navigate a life freed from the ghost of your actions. He needs parents who are strong enough to own their mistakes and build a future together. With that thought, Sarah felt a wave of purpose washing over her. It was no longer about past mistakes. It was about how both she and Henry would rise from the ruins of their lives to offer Jason something authentic and whole. Your Honor, she spoke with resolve echoing louder than ever. If we can reshape our understanding and find a way to work together for Jason's sake, then we could begin healing from the pain that torments us. We owe it to him. The judge nodded gravely, sensing the transition taking place not just within her but within Henry as well. This moment of admission held the potential for change, for Sarah to prove her growth, an accomplished woman standing on the precipice of what could be an entirely new familial bond. With clarity illuminating her path ahead, she turned to Henry, their eyes locking in an unspoken agreement. The ghosts of their past had taken a back seat. Together, they could forge ahead into a future built on truth, responsibility, and forgiveness. The courtroom echoed Sarah's declaration, reverberating out of the depths of her heart. It wasn't merely a triumph over Henry. It was a victory over every fear, every moment of doubt that had plagued her for years. The moment she had longed for was finally here, a stepping stone toward a reassuring future. As the gavel fell, marking the closing of a tense chapter in their lives, Sarah breathed a sigh of relief. She had conquered her past and by doing so, laid the foundation of a new life for herself and Jason. The triumph was hers. She had achieved personal growth and transformation, weaving assurance into her identity. Now she could embrace the life ahead strong, resilient, and empowered in her truth. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more viewers just like you. Comment with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ultimate triumph of personal overcoming.